So talk to me about, where did that come from? How did you figure that out? And then what are the different types of stories that we need to tell?
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying there are many different types, but it doesn't have to be an intimidating, concept. I think the big thing comes by take a step back. Let's step out of writing. Let's step out of the creation piece, and let's just think business wise. We've got a goal. There's something in sales that you are trying to accomplish. Maybe you're trying to penetrate a new market. Maybe you know that you face a lot of objections on what's the implementation period, like how long is this going to be? What could go wrong here? There's often too, you might face competition with competition, I should say. You might face objections with competition. How are you better than X company? How are you better than Y company? Or you may face challenges in disambiguating. Maybe you're entering a new market and that new market isn't like your old buyer. Your old buyer might inherently understand your value and how you fit in their workflow or in their world. This new market, you might be new to them. If you zoom out and you go, what are our business goals and what are the types of stories we need to tell to support them? Then some of these types of case studies start to make themselves evident. I want to talk about a handful of them and how to come at that. But some of the ones that we were talking about, for example, is switcher stories. Instead of just telling a story about someone who made a decision with you and they experienced your features and so on, you could anchor that story in the decision to leave a competitor and come to you, and what the experience of that transition and now the experience of working with you is like. And that can be the backbone of your story. That comparison can be very powerful. And I know from having worked with clients who have deployed these types of stories, the ability to be very specific and to show the not only technical changes, but the emotional changes and the emotional impact of this is far less frustrating. The adoption is much better. My team is complaining less. That can be enormously valuable. Another type of story can be, I alluded to earlier, that disambiguator type of story. A really great example of this. So it's one of the most extreme examples, but I think it explains this well. During the pandemic, a company who did industrial air filtration, we're talking for manufacturing with fiberglass dust and dealing with all kinds of particulate and things like that. Very complex, very technical. You're selling into this manufacturing audience, old school, but they got it. Well, the pandemic starts unfolding and they realize as a company, hey, our filtration system actually could benefit gym owners. Now there's this big hesitancy and people wanting to return to public, go to gyms. This huge new market now opens up for this. Well, they needed new stories. They needed to tell their stories in a different way with language and concepts that appealed. So they used these disambiguator stories to explain how their product worked and how it kind of rolled out in that world. And that was enormously valuable in getting gym owners to see the potential. Another kind of story can be implementation stories. Sometimes you don't even have to wait for the whole of your value to be realized. I mentioned this earlier as well, but you can tell an entire valuable story, a case study, just on the implementation phase of what did it look like from getting started? How were they taken care of? What were the timelines like? What did that look like? I think one of the biggest barriers, especially in software, is this question of moving from old to new or implementing a new system, adoption. Those stories in and of themselves can be tremendously valuable. And then there's myriad more. I mean, a favorite of mine is Playbook, taking an actual recipe for how a client used your solution to arrive at a result and baking that very prescriptive aspect in. But all of that to say, you don't have to treat a win like a win like a win. If you start with the end goal, who are we trying to appeal to? What message are we trying to send? Now you can be very intentional about the questions you ask, the stories you capture, and how you present that.